Yeah, I'll tell you what happened under the Cambie Street Bridge last week, but you might not believe me. It sure ain't the story you'll hear on the news. What'd they say, there was a gas leak or something? There wasn't no gas leak. I'll tell you what. See, there were a couple of elderly folks who'd been living down there, under the south end of the Cambie Street Bridge. We're talking just up from the inlet, where all that ocean water comes in. I used to love how it smells down there. I know some folks don't like it, but I'm not from here. I'm from the prairies. And being here in Vanity City, I always loved getting to smell the seawater, no matter how dirty it got. Though, of course, not so much now. So this old couple had built themselves a little home out of cardboard boxes just under the seawall. Up out of the water, but along the gravel banks. Right by where the rich folks go jogging all the time, but kind of beneath like a big thorn bush, so nobody ever got too close. They'd been there for a few months. Nice enough folks. She was half blind and he was half crazy, so they got along just fine. I didn't really know them. They were just some little old people trying to stay safe. She had those milky white eyes, and he always wore this dirty suit that smelled of BO and cat food. I figure if the cops had gone down there and actually asked them to leave, if they'd been human beings about it, maybe things would have gone a different way. But they went in hard and it all went down like it did. First, a police car with a couple of cops pulled up. This is like just after midnight, Thursday, or Friday, I guess. They pulled up and put on their flashing lights and then got out and started poking at the old folks, asking them questions and then not even giving them time to answer, just hassling them. The old man must have said something they didn't like, because all of a sudden the cops were on their radio, and a few minutes later, a paddy wagon van pulls up with a couple of more cops. They start trying to get the old folks into the wagon, and the old guy, he's not having it. He's putting his feet down, swinging his arms, almost having a fit. And that's when one of the cops cracks the old guy from behind with his big cop flashlight. You've seen those things, right? They're like clubs. He thumped the old fella so hard the old man just toppled right over. I heard it when his skull hit the sidewalk. Sounded like a coconut falling onto concrete. I was watching from a little hidey hole across the street. That's how I seen all this. I used to have this little spot around there. It was kind of under a big shrub, and it was a place where I was sleeping off and on when the weather was good. So, I saw the old man go down, and that was bad enough. I seen stuff like that before, that kind of violence. You don't like to, but it's just the world we live in, right? But then, just a few seconds later, that thing came out of the shadows. Now, of course, I don't know for sure what I saw. I know I saw something, but I don't know what it was. It seemed sort of like a person, but it was hard to tell. Its skin was slick and glossy and all wet from living in the water, I guess. Reminded me of like a fish or a snake. It was hard to look at the thing as it slipped in and out of the shadows and the flashing red and blue lights of the cops. But I couldn't take my eyes away. The old folks under the bridge, I guess they'd been looking after it. It had been a secret, but not much of one. I'd heard they'd been feeding something down there by the water's edge, but I just assumed it was like a crocodile some kid had flushed down the toilet, something like that. Nobody's sure where the thing came from or what it was, but I figure it was probably some sort of science experiment that had escaped, like down into the sewer system, and that's how it came to be living down in the inlet, getting close to those bridge folks. They'd feed it, look after it if it got hurt. Hell, I'd even heard the old lady singing to it one night. Of course, I never knew what the thing was, and I didn't want to know. It wasn't my business. There's plenty of secrets in this town that are better off being kept secret. That's what I think, anyway. But then I saw that thing when it came up out of the shadows. It was moving so fast, I barely got a glimpse of it, and I guess it was about the same for the cops. The ones it killed. I don't think those guys knew what the hell was going on. Just one moment they were breathing and laughing, and then suddenly they were down on the ground. Their throats slit open and their stomachs ripped out by the thing's talons or claws or whatever they were. I'm talking gutted, like entrails in their hands, gasping for breath. It was like a horror movie. I got one good look at the thing when it turned towards me for just a second, and what I saw was like a nightmare. Its face was just a dark hole full of concentric rings of sharp little teeth. When I was a kid, I had a science teacher, Mr. Joslin. He had this big jar full of formaldehyde and this horrible-looking fish thing called a lamprey eagle. That's what this thing looked like. It was like a leech with sharpened fangs. There were no other features that I could make out. No eyes, just a gaping mouth and all those rows of teeth. I don't know, I didn't see it so good. What I did see real good, like way too good, was the insides of the cops. That's something I'd never seen before. Now I can't stop seeing it. Like inside my head, spilling out on the ground. It's like inside of my head those men are still screaming. And I'm always thinking, if they hadn't been such assholes, maybe that thing wouldn't have attacked. The remaining couple of cops went back to back, trying to fend the thing off. They fired their guns a bunch of times, but didn't seem to hit nothing. It was like a slasher movie condensed down to a few seconds. The flashing lights of the police vehicles were an epileptic nightmare, giving everything a weird strobing effect. The waves of red and blue sliding up and down the creature's oily hide as it moved, making it look like a translucent shadow made of glass. You'll have to forgive me. I was pretty high. One moment it was there and the next it was gone. It would just slip in and out of sight, leaving you wondering what you'd really seen. The cops were trying to back themselves into their van when the thing moved on them again. It came from around the front of the van as they were both looking the other way, and then it let out this sound. This wet, angry sound. I can't put it into words proper. Not a hiss or a roar, but something else. Both cops turned around at once and they saw the thing. They looked straight at it, into that big black pit of a mouth lined with all those sharp little teeth. And it grabbed up the one cop, the one closest to it, and the thing had its back to me, so I couldn't really see what it was doing, but I could hear it. I could hear it when it bit down, when it put its mouth onto the cop and then pulled back, taking out a big fistful of meat and bone as it went. Throat and shoulder. The cop let out a short little scream which kind of gurgled at the end, and then he went quiet. That's when the runner showed up. I figure it was the gunshots and the screaming that brought him in. I'd seen the runner before. The free runner. Not up close or anything, but I'd seen him around. Jumping over cars and climbing up the sides of buildings. I thought he was just some crazy dude, but then he started getting that reputation for fucking with the cops. I like to think he's a cool guy, but you never know. He might be a real asshole. You never know. He just looks like a dude, right? Average height, average size, dark hair. I'd say he's in his early 20s. He ain't like a movie star or anything. He's just some dude wearing that weird purple tracksuit. At least he was that night. I saw him come flying in from above, throwing himself head over heels across the streetlights, and then he landed on the tips of his toes on the roof of the paddy wagon. The last cop was hollering for help by then. He didn't even notice the runner. He was just screaming as the creature moved in for the kill. The runner did like a somersault kick off the van's roof and into the creature, sending it flying into the cop car. The car's windows blew out from the impact and the thing slid underneath the car. From there, from where I was, I could just watch as the runner and the creature stalked each other between the flashing lights and the police vehicles. Sometimes they were too fast and slippery to even see, only to freeze for a moment in clear view, like they were daring the other to step out and attack. The cop who was still standing kept making these soft, squeaking sounds as he clung to the side of the van. I kind of thought the runner was using the guy as bait to draw the creature out, but that seems a little harsh to just assume. Eventually, the creature got its hands on the runner and tossed him into one of those big cement support structures of the bridge. You can still go down there and see where the cement is all cracked and shit. That was from the dude's spine hitting it. The runner picked himself up and went at the thing again, and this time when they clashed, there was a burst of bright red. That was the creature putting its claws across the runner's chest. This arc of the guy's blood came out like a lawn sprinkler spurting water out onto the street. But when the runner finally managed to get in some hits, it all ended pretty quick. A kick to the midsection followed by a couple of good punches to the side of the head. Once the thing was stunned, the runner grabbed it by its shoulders and smashed it face first into the cop car a couple of times. It wasn't classy and it wasn't award-winning kung fu. It was sloppy and crude, but, pretty effective. Then he kind of paused for a moment, and I could tell he was trying to decide if he needed to kill the thing or not, because it was clearly only going to stay stunned for a second. So that's when the old lady starts screaming, No, please don't hurt him. And the runner stopped. That's taking a real chance, I figure, because he didn't know if the creature would understand. If it even could. But the old lady kept yelling, insisting, and so the runner stepped back and the old lady moved between them. She got down on the ground and she started trying to help the thing like it was a little kid who just crashed their bike. She used an old rag to dab at the thing's injuries, and she was whispering to it. I don't know how much that thing understood, but it sure seemed to like her. And slowly, the creature, or whatever it was, it picked itself up off the ground. The runner and that thing eyed each other like alley cats. I still wasn't sure what I was looking at. The flashing lights had become a little dizzying, and the thing had this hunched, over-articulated way of moving that kept me from ever getting a real grasp on its shape. But once the runner chilled out, the thing moved back into the shadows and from there on into the sea, disappearing beneath the waves from whence it came, I assume. 2 cops were dead and 2 were alive but traumatized. The runner had to use their radio to call for help, and then he sat there and waited with them until an ambulance came. I heard the cop who got bit went into a coma, and the other cop filed for a medical stress break. I heard he's refused to speak publicly about what happened. The old folks moved a ways down the shoreline and set up their little shack in a place that's a bit harder to find. It should last them a few more months, at least until the weather gets real bad. Nobody but me knows that they were even involved with what happened. I'm the only witness. I think the cops wanted to put the dead officers on the runner, like they do whenever they can, but the cop who didn't get hurt, the only thing he would say in public was that the runner saved his life. So that made it a hard story to spin. I get why the dude isn't talking about it. Me, I can't stop thinking about that stuff I seen. The bodies, the blood, the stuff that's inside of people coming out. And that thing, that creature. I know it wasn't evil, it was just scared. But the way it looked, it was haunting. It haunts me. Makes me scared and sick. All the way to my soul. I feel like I seen something I wasn't supposed to. I know it's still fresh, and hopefully it'll fade with time, but as it is, I gotta get pretty drunk every night if I want to get any sleep at all. At least if I black out, I don't remember my nightmares, As for the runner, I don't know. I mean, shit, I guess he was just trying to help, right? But I don't know.